Thank you very much for everyone for coming here for this research session. And I thank all the speakers for their excellent overview as well as the interesting cases. My talk will be a little different. My talk title is Harmonizing, How We Can Global and then Regional Perspectives Work Together for the Gendered Innovations in Research. Here I'd like to share our experiences and our difficulties and then thoughts that came across among the members of the KOFWST research team on gendered innovations. This is a brief overview of how we were developed. And the first time we met about gendered innovations is by Dr. Hesugli, who brought this book to me and said, this is something you should do as a president-elect at the time of KOFWST, because this is a new field that we have to engage in, and then it will be a very important mission. Because she was my president of the for the KOFWST president, I could not say no. And also, she gave me a pilot project to explore the ways how we can do it in Korea. So we did the pilot project for about 4 to 5 months. And then the members of the KOFWST got very interested in this work. So we developed and expanded the cases. And I'm very happy that at this summit, we have more than 30 papers presented at this conference. The pilot project was a very good motive for us to move on, and it was called Innovations in Research and Development in Science and Engineering with gender consideration. It was a short-term project. Of course, we extended a little bit because of the short time. And we ended up having 7 cases developed in basic science, health, and engineering and environment. And during this time, we had workshops among ourselves, as well as Dr. Londa Schibinger came, and it was a great encouragement for our team, because we didn't know whether we were doing the right thing or we were going the wrong way. But she gave a lot of encouragement, and then people became more confident about themselves. And we had a forum among the members. Not only the researchers, the other members were involved at the beginning, and then it helped us to widen our scope. So after the pilot project, we continued, and then Dr. Politzer came, and then she also gave us more examples and more encouragement. And then, so we participated to Gender Summit 4, which was held in Brussels, because by the time it was decided that the Gender Summit 6 will be held in Seoul. So we wanted to know what is going on this gender summits. And then we, among the 7 cases we developed during the pilot project, we had expert reviews of the 2 cases and with Dr. Schubinger's team. And then the 2 cases are now on the Gender Innovations website. And we also had a forum at the National Assembly to make the policy more concrete. And as I told you before, now we have more than 30 papers. I think it was about 38 that the last count was. And then not only the papers, the people, the scientists are very enthusiastic about gendered innovations, how they can be incorporated in your own research. And they are enjoying, I hope, this summit with your discussions with experts. During our work, the cases and methods developed in Europe, and then Dr. Schubinger's team was very helpful. Without that, we could not go anywhere. But as she said, she proposes 12 methods. She gave 12 methods on the list. And then, so these are from the beginning of the research, you have to do it. But for every case, it is more important to do the more essential step is to analyze by sex or gender, how they interact, how other factors affect them. Well, it sounds easy, or it may sound simple, but it is very difficult when you try to do it in your own case. So as already shown by Dr. Schubinger, the sex refers to more of the biological characteristics or biological qualities, but gender refers to cultural attitudes, behaviors, and other norms. So biological sex is more easier to understand for scientists and engineers. But more problem was to find enough data to do the analysis by sex. So in my case of dietary assessment, I looked at the questionnaires developed over the 30 years, and I found 196 papers describing the methods of how the questionnaires are developed. And only about 11% had information about sex, how women and men's diet are included in the questionnaire. And when Dr. Lee of our team looked at the sex of the cells, she's doing cell experiments, and she was trying to find what kind of cells she was using. And she found that from the cell banks where people buy the cells, for example, for the mouse cell, which is very common, like Dr. Mulder uses a lot. And then there is so small portion of the cells that describe the cell origin. So if the researchers want to do the sex analysis, there is no tool for them to do the analysis. Now, gender is more difficult for the scientists to apply. Gender is not familiar to scientists and engineers and technologists. So in general, gender refers to the gender roles, attitudes, and behaviors. So it's sex-based social structure, or gender roles, or gender identity. And in gender studies, they say you should not, well, you exclude the biological sex. It's strictly socially how women are treated. So it's very culture specific, and even in one society, it can change over the time. So in gender studies, you're more interested in how these things lead to inequality, gender inequality. So it leads to the men-women unequal relationship in the society. So traditionally, gender studies concentrated on gender inequality, but there are inequality, refers to the unequal treatment or perceptions to individuals based on their gender or their sex. Okay. But there are other differences which is not, well, we cannot say unequal, but there are differences. So for gender studies, people have been, or the researchers have been interested in inequality, but not much about difference. But for gendered innovations, I think, we have to include all, either difference, inequality, or even biological sex. They should be all considered in your case. Well, I was in charge of gender policy in Korea for 2 years, and I'm familiar with gender inequality index or other problems about the gender issues in the world, and they seem to be the same issues occurring across the world. But the regional differences exist, of course, and then that also has to be counted in your case. So this is gender inequality map. It's a map drawn from the gender inequality index produced by United Nations. And you can see that the light colors are more equal, and the dark colors are more unequal. And then there are large differences among the world. But even in Asia-Pacific region, we have great diversity in the, maybe more diverse than either Europe or North America or other regions. So we have a lot of differences among Asia-Pacific. So how can the gender issues can be dealt in Asia-Pacific will be a big challenge for gendered innovations. So for example, this is the survey result of the perception of gender roles in different countries. So the more equal contribution, this is for the more equal contribution of men and women in the household, and the red line means the division of roles, more traditional division of roles. The man earns the money, and then wife take care of the household. So in all the countries, it's higher than the red lines. So people are more equal, prefer more equality. But in Asian countries, the difference is much smaller than what you see in European countries. So the perception is very different. And this is job rate. And in all the countries, the men, well, job rates in the men are higher than women. But again, there is a large difference. And in Asia, there are some countries more equal than other countries. Australia is very different from other Asian countries. And China is also women much more than, job rate is much higher than other countries. And also women have a lower wage. So it's also the same. Well, I'll just move over. This is unpaid work, hours of unpaid work. Okay. So in other countries, women spend more hours on unpaid work in the household. And then also there are differences in the region among the Asia-Pacific countries. So when you compare the time spent on household between men and women, Korean men and Japanese men, they spend only half an hour a day for the household. But so women spend much more hours for the housework. So all these issues, how you can select, what do you have to select for your case? That's a big challenge for any researcher. So, and then you can say the social roles or gender attitudes, this thing, but where you can find in other life, you can apply to your case. That's a different, education, job, other inequality issues that I just mentioned. But I'm sure there are many more areas that you can find that has to be taken into account for your case. Well, this is from the Gender Innovations website, and it's about non-communicable diseases, which is affected later in life. And at the birth, of course, you have your biological characteristics, and that changes a little time. But you have a lot more changes in your gender-related social factors over the course of the life. So by the end of in the middle age or late age, you have much more influence by the gender-related social factors affecting your disease risk than biological factors. And in this case, it's mostly health-related behaviors she's emphasizing. But for your case, I'm sure you can find many other things, just the things that I listed here, but I'm sure there are more things that you can find that has to be applied to your case. For my diet assessment case, I found that people have to take care of their how much they eat, what they eat, and how they eat, how much they eat. That has to be assessed, and then that's related to the diet disease. But because of this inaccurate consideration of gender, you lead to not accurate tool for the women, and then you have to make some changes for the gender innovations. So during the development of the questionnaire, you have to know how much and what kind of food they eat, but also you have to have appropriate protocols that's suitable for men and women, because they very differ in the way they eat. And when you do all these things right, you can get the good results. And for the colorectal cancer case, and the cancers for the women are generally on this right side. So this is biological characteristics that makes it very difficult for the for diagnosis. But also we have women who do not go to health checkup as often as men in Korea, or they do not like to have the colonoscopy because of the procedure. So that leads to the higher mortality of women by colorectal cancer in later life. So how can you do the gendered innovations? You have to identify the sex differences in biology and also social barriers that prohibit women from going to health checkups or screening. Right? And then you have to establish the proper protocols or treatment so that you can have a quality of life and then long life for women. So all this, as I hope I gave you some examples of the different aspects of gender that has to be considered in each case, and that will be different depending on the society. So how can you harmonize? The cases developed by us or Europe or US can be applied, or it has to be checked whether appropriate gender consideration has been made. And international cooperations such as this summit will probably help us to gain the goal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Professor Paik. I'm gonna move to the discussion, question and answer session, and Professor Schubinger, she's gonna lead the discussion session.
The floor is open for your questions and for your comments, please, to any of the speakers.
Thank you very much for your wonderful talk. And I am Yuko Hayashi from Yamaguchi University from Japan. And then I would like to ask the Professor Rhonda Schubinger. Your talk is very impressive, and I would like to ask about the LGBT. And when I asked the Google company to give us the data of the gender, they said that they don't have the gender because of the LGBT, and then they didn't get the women's data itself. So, and then sometimes that kind of the obstacle for you to do the research, or how do you manage the diversity, like the gender difference and the LGBT differences?
Yeah, so the question is about lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transsexuals.
Right.
And how do companies consider this subgroup?
I'm sorry. Because of the diversities are so different.
Yes.
And then they didn't the statistics about the female and the male. When I asked the Google, they said they didn't get the data on the male and the female, because you cannot say male or female, because of the LGBT. So, and then it's sometime your study is stumble to the obstacle, that kind of obstacle, or not?
Well, so are you saying you talked to Google and they said they can't look at gender differences because there are so many? Is that what they were saying to you?
And,
I'm not sure I understood correctly.
Yes.
It's very interesting because Facebook was very much criticized for only having two boxes, male and female.
Right. Yeah, I mean that.
So Facebook launched 51 gender identities that you could choose from. And they're really only thinking about gender identity. They're not thinking about the norms, the social pressures, the gender relations. They only wanted to know how you, as a Facebook user, wanted to identify yourself. So they launched 51 categories. Now, I've been in the gender business for, 30 years or so, and I had to go to the dictionary and look some of them up, which was fascinating. And the one I had to look up was cisgender, which is the unmarked category. We talk about transgender, but I didn't know that cisgender, that is to say, people whose biology and their gender identity matches, in our cultural sense of what matches, that those people are called cisgender. So for me, it was very interesting that the unmarked category, the people who aren't transgender, in fact, that there was a name for that, because I hadn't known. So, I should know more about that. So I think it's very interesting. I think Facebook has taken that down now, but I think it was a very interesting moment to recognize the great continuum of gender in the culture and to give people more choice. I emphasize that gender is on a continuum, but we know that there's a opening up of gender identity so that there is more fluidity. Maybe if we talk about Sweden for a minute, Sweden has established preschools where they're trying to raise children who are gender neutral. So there's no suggestion that boys go play with trucks and girls go play with dolls. They're trying to neutralize everything at the beginning so that all children can explore their own potential. But I think it's a question, do we want to get rid of gender, or do we want for people to be able to be diverse but valued equally? I think these are all very important questions. I don't know if I captured what you were.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
understandable. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Susanna from Malaysia. I have one question for President and Professor Hee Yung Park. Okay, I would like to know whether there is another, in your study, in a pilot study, you touch on the factors of religions, or maybe also the belief, because I believe there is a contribution towards the innovation and economic development. For some country whereby, and also religious, they did not allow or permit the woman to contribute or to participate. So example like religious also not allow, example like, in the marriage, whereby the man can have more than 4 wives. So this is very stressful to the woman, especially the professional woman, whereby they very stressful and they choose married compared to their professional. So what is your view towards this? It's a real and a real case.
I'm not sure whether my study has any clue on that. I think that's more of the problems that has to be dealt by the people who in different fields than science and engineering. I don't know why, how we can, but scientists are, as I said, it's very difficult for them to understand the gender and how to apply gender into your own cases. So for the social problems or religious aspects of that determined, it's very difficult problem, whether it can be dealt in one case. I don't think that will be able to do that. Maybe it has to be dealt with among the leaders of different aspects of either the scholars and then the practitioners, politicians, and different leaders in the society has to see how that can be dealt for the women and men, and then reconcile within your domain of religion. So I don't know whether it's also any answer to you, but I think it's a very difficult situation for women if you have to do that when everywhere else women do not have that kind of problem. I agree with you, and I hope there will be some more discussions on that among the leaders.
Hello, I'm Donegan Smith from the University of Kansas. When you talk about gendered innovations, there doesn't seem to be a discussion of gender and patenting, or sex differences in patenting, and how, as policymakers and people concerned about science and technology, we're going to sort of close the patent gap, and how gendered innovation can address the patent gap. And I also want to follow up on the question about Google. Google predicts your sex or your gender based on your search patterns. So if you type in ad preferences, based on what you search on, it will tell you how old you are and what sex you are, according to Google. They're just not very good about sharing their data.
So does anyone want to speak about patents? Sue Rosser has done a wonderful study of the gender gap in patents, and I recommend that to people. I don't really know much about the gender gap in patenting, but obviously if women are going to bring forward more innovations, they can work with patent offices to get their patents. I mean, I think this is really a participation issue, and it's a very important issue, and I really recommend Sue Rosser's work on that. I'm going to talk a little bit about, so the Google search and that sort of thing. There's some really new, interesting stuff going on in Silicon Valley about fairness in those kinds of searches, and it has to do with the classification of people. And I think it's so some, let's say, employees at companies, I don't know that the companies themselves, but some of the computer scientists are concerned about this and taking some steps. So I'll report on a couple of those this afternoon. We had a question here.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the team members for a very comprehensive discussion on the issues of gender. But I have a question to Professor Londa yourself. The question is aimed at you were talking about the curriculum in medical schools, and you will be interacting with them on the curriculum. Now, you know the medical curriculum is compact. It's very short, 4 years, and at every level, we take up gender issues, either in the preclinical or the clinical program, or the psychology of the psychiatry and psychology of the program. I just want to know, at which level will you put your input for the curriculum, and what would it be?
Oh, so there will be a summit on curriculum integrating sex and gender into the medical curriculum at Mayo Clinic in October. And what is I believe that the way that I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know, but the way that's being suggested is that for every single topic, you just add in the important sex differences or gender differences. So if you're doing heart disease, you want to talk about the very important sex differences in symptoms. You might talk about the gender differences in the amount of time it takes the emergency teams to get a woman to the hospital. It's a longer time. And then if you're doing lungs, I mean, it would be through the body system, which is the way these things are taught in the US. So it might be different in your country, how this would be done, but there's a big group now looking at this. We have time for maybe a couple more questions. Yes? Raise your hand high so I don't miss you if you want to ask a question.
My name is Kim Myung-ja, the chair, board of the Center for Women in Science, Engineering, and Science, Technology, and Engineering. I have a small question for more interactive discussion. According to the data by an international organization, the gender equality has been achieved in the field of health, which is quite at the index of 1, which is quite different from the cases of other science and engineering fields, as well as economic sector. And despite this, from hearing your enlightening research outcomes, I got the impression that the gender equality is more, if not the most, needed in the field of health. Then, my question goes like this. Achieving gender equality in some specific field alone cannot solve the excellence in research. Is it valid? I mean, my question, do you agree on my question? Achieving the gender equality alone does not solve to achieve the excellence
Oh, I
in
see. You mean achieving
Gender
equality and
equality.
participation between men and women. Is that what you mean?
yes, gender equality.
So does getting equal numbers of men and women
does
give
not
you excellent research?
Yeah,
Am I-
alone cannot solve the task of achieving excellence in research and engineering and other dissemination of the outcomes of R&D. Then what would be your answer to my question? What more do we need to achieve excellence in research and other activities related to the science and engineering knowledge creation?
Does someone who would like to speak to this?
I could elaborate on that from my field of expertise. I would say that if it was demanded in giving the funding for the project, that in my case, men and women as sex would be considered, and that would have been followed up through the project, then the crash safety area would have looked differently. Then that would have avoided that we had a norm that only represent half the population. So from my perspective as researcher, it's essential that this is formulated in the from the funding agencies, that this has to be part of any high quality or any funded research, and that you follow up on that. It could, from a European project perspective, we have a history of adding gender as an aspect of having males and females in the project, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these questions are addressed in the research as such.
Yeah, I think there are lots of things we could do. We know that a lot of federal standards or government standards are based on the male body. I mean, Astrid's talk gave us a number of examples, so even something as ubiquitous as automobile safety, our governments are allowing people to use a male standard which does not protect all parts of the population. So I think we really have a lot of opportunity for researchers, and I think the funding agencies are crucial here. I think the peer-reviewed journals, if the Elsevier guy had stayed, I would like to hear what their policies are for all of their journals, whether they require authors to have excellence in their research. So I think there's a lot of things we can do, and they all have to work together, right? Cultures change through reshuffling all of the pieces kind of at once is what we need. So little by little, I hope we can get there. But I think governmental policy has a huge role to play. One more question, and then we're going to have lunch. Oh, sorry, see? You're way in the back. Good for you.
Hello, I'm Yan Pan from Taiwan. I have feedback to the first question and also a question. My feedback is actually to introduce my poster, which is number 41. It talks about unisex toilet. I think it's a good example to show that sometimes we can include different, diverse gender identities into our analysis. When we talk about sex and gender analysis, maybe it's not only dichotomous. Okay, that's my feedback. And I think we should start trying to be more sensitive about these diverse sexual and gender identities. And my question is for Professor Mogio. Maybe you and other presenters also. Because when we talk about biological differences, male and female mice or human beings, sometimes we forgot, some feminists say biological differences is also constructed. So I don't know if you can tell which kind of biological differences is really essential and which kind are actually constructed, and how do you deal with this kind of problems? Thank
you. With all due respect to feminist theory, I reject that entirely. There's very, very little reason to believe that rodents have any sort of social, cultural construction of anything. That would have to be proven to me, and no one's really come close. I think if you can find something different between male and female rodents, you can be pretty sure you're talking about a sex difference and not a gender difference. If anyone knows of any relevant data that could convince me otherwise, I would love to hear it. But I just simply don't believe that's a factual statement.
Well, we do know that culture can influence the development of your biology, like for an osteoporosis, the bones. But this is not, I know this is not what you're talking about.
But not in rats, right?
Right. So, but anyway, I'm very interested in the unisex toilets. So I'll come and look at your poster. There are some issues of cultural sensitivities. I don't know if you're advocating unisex toilets or not, but there are some cultural sensitivities that not all people would want the unisex toilets. And we had a question about religion over here, and so I'm very curious, and I hope to come and have a discussion with you. So, on that note, let's all go and have some lunch. Thank you very much for your attention.